Hello and welcome to another New Catholic Generation TV show review for the Young Pope episodes 5 and 6. I am David, here with Ned and Joe once again. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts and her being 2,000 miles away, Madison is unable to join us, but we are still here to review it. So now we have seen episodes 5 and 6. Episode 5 features a lot of flashbacks of Pope Pius XIII back when he was still little young boy Lenny, and sets up a lot of scenes with his friend, who also ends up becoming a priest and then a high-ranking official at the Vatican. It delves into the anguish she has over not being able to see his parents again alive. It also shows Cardinal Voiello's scheme of trying to have a woman seduce the Pope, which doesn't work because the Pope rejects her, saying,
I renounce my fellow man, my fellow woman, because I'm incapable of withstanding the heartbreak of love. I love God because it's so painful to love human beings.
Cardinal Voiello realizes that he is not going to be able to get the Pope this way. At the end of the episode, the Pope finally addresses the rest of the cardinals in a very pompous fashion.
More like Pope Pompous the 13th.
In episode 6, we get the Pope finally meeting with the woman who tried to seduce him after being pushed into it by Cardinal Voiello, but actually developed a connection with him because she was infertile. She ends up having a baby, which the Pope gets to see. The Pope meets with the Italian Prime Minister, and they engage in an intense battle of sass and
Politics.
Yeah.
These two episodes were kind of a mess. The fifth one was a bit more linear, but even then, there was a lot of, weird, just randomness.
Well, I will say this. I mean, I saw definitely that they were really going for the surrealistic juxtapositions in this one. The Italian surrealist cinema style came out stronger in these episodes than any episodes before it.
Hardcore. It's understandable. There were quite a few parts that of the artistic and surrealist form that showed that, I will give a slight little clap to. Once again, this show has amazing cinematography.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
I think that is
Beautiful cinematography. One of my favorite scenes was when the Pope was talking to Cardinal Voiello. He was basically walking on this stone wall.
Oh, yeah.
And he was higher than Voiello.
He just kept ascending. The wall kept getting taller as he kept on going with his speech. That was just really putting the cardinal in his place.
It was a very symbolic position because that was when he had found out all the schemes that Cardinal Voiello was going to try and do against him.
Exactly, yeah. I loved it. When it comes to the artistry behind the creation of this, it's very hard for me to hate it because I love artisticness in film. And to see that in television is even a greater feat because television is mainly meant for people who are just more casual, I guess, or because
you're more straightforward because you have so many more hours to film.
Exactly. One of my biggest issues with this series, and Joe will definitely agree with me on this one, I love Friday the 13th and many other horror movies and shows and stuff like that. I'm very open about talking about why I like it and stuff like that, and honestly, I'm having huge issues with this show when it comes to its sexuality and nudity. And one of those reasons is I can make arguments for Friday the 13th and why it's in there. A lot of the nudity is not really necessary in the show. For something that is supposed to be, it's not supposed to be Catholic. And the more and more I'm watching this, this show is not supposed to be specifically for Catholics, I think.
It comes across as a show made for Italians.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a show made for Italians. Kudos to you guys, I guess. This isn't my biggest problem with the show. Because like I told you guys, I do watch some of that kind of stuff. And my biggest problem is that it's just completely unnecessary. Who knows? There's still 4 episodes left. If it does move forward, that there is some reasonings behind all of this stuff, then I'll be okay, I guess that makes sense. I didn't like it, but I guess it makes sense. The other biggest issue behind a lot of the sex in this stuff is the fact that the person having sex was a Catholic priest. I'm surprised I'm the one complaining about this more than you at the moment.
Go ahead.
Joe's happy he doesn't have to do the talking about this for once.
Oh, don't worry, I have to.
No, he's going to talk. You remember when on the last panel for this, when we talked about it showing contradiction.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's hardcore showing.
Oh yeah.
I feel like the overall message so far is the church is a contradiction.
We can even look back to the papal speech he gave to the cardinals. He talks about like, oh, we got to remain hidden and everything because that's how we're going to be wanted by people. But then he goes on to say that the church is only going to be for the few. Again, contradictions. In the right context and with a better attitude, some of the things he said in that speech are good and probably some things we could use. For instance, like a lot of people in the church are too focused on tolerance to an extreme, where in the sense we're like just saying that, oh, it's kind of like fine if you're like sinning all the time. But I have a problem with this on either extremes. If there's a wrong attitude towards it and there are other wrong things included in it, something that's technically right can be in the wrong context made out to be something wrong. It goes both ways, whether you're ultra conservative or ultra low. It goes both ways. The context matters.
One thing I would want to address that you said earlier, where you're talking about the necessity of portraying certain things and you didn't see a reason behind it. I could see perhaps the reason for them doing it.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to whether we agree with the reason or not. I think you said, so the sexually provocative scene is at the beginning of episode 6, where they go back and forth between showing the Pope and the cardinals singing in a very beautiful, gorgeous setting and interspersing it with the Pope's childhood friend, who is now a cardinal, engaging in sexual acts with many women prostitutes.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Guy.
Yeah. I think you were saying that the message you got out of that is that the church is a contradiction. The people in it are hypocrites. They're inconsistent.
Yeah.
And there are definitely people within the church who are.
No, absolutely. There are.
Yeah, and I think this is the same sort of thing we encountered in Silence, perhaps, where you show people who have fallen and are doing bad things, and the question comes down to, is this being portrayed as a good thing? I think, Joe, you can argue that even showing it at all is a bad thing in and of itself.
Why do people put these things in movies in the first place? It's because our culture is so obsessed with sex. They want to see that kind of stuff. But that's making them enter into sin more. With this being, talking about the church being a contradiction.
Yeah.
And then adding the sex. This is something our culture loves because it wants to find something wrong with the Catholic Church that's not even there in the first place. They wanted to find something wrong with Jesus, and there was nothing wrong with him there. So naturally, they're going to want to find something wrong with his church. I don't know the exact intentions of they specifically wanted to say specific things about the church. I mean, like, if you know anything about the church, if you've taken Theology 101, you know that, like, it shows a complete ignorance of Catholicism in so many of the different aspects. And it's not just like, oh, there's this little theological point here, there's this little theological point there they get, but it's not a theological work. Literally, the main story plot of episode 5 was based around you become religious to run from love. That was the basis of that. That was the quote from, I believe it was Pius the 13th.
Yeah.
That entire episode unfolded around this falsehood of Catholicism. But that is something so easily that our culture believes, that it talks about, we see sometimes how young men that want to enter the priesthood are pressured by some family members are like, no, don't do that, get married, because they see priesthood, they see religious life as lonely instead of full of love and joy and beauty. So that is so portrayed, that cultural understanding of what religious life is portrayed, kind of like pushed forward in stuff that people already, not even like trying to convince people to believe it, but something they actually believe, that religious life is like this horror, that is so miserable. And it's just so not true. Again, like, there might be more. I have only the sliverest, tiniest bit of hope that it'll get better, but my hope is decreasing rapidly. It's about dead for this show. I know you can't expect much from like Hollywood and stuff, but the fact that this interferes, that this is going against the dignity of the human person in so many ways and is insulting to the Catholic Church, just for that reason, it alone is just enough to be upset over. I'm sorry, I didn't even plan on doing this. I just went off.
It's okay.
I'm
Do you want even more insulting?
What?
This isn't technically Hollywood.
Okay. So
Yeah, I was going to clarify that. Yeah,
I kind of said Hollywood. I was like, this probably isn't Hollywood, but I'm
You mean kind of just like film in general?
Film culture in general. That's what I meant to say.
Okay.
There is an artistry to it that I get out of the show where it is extremely provocative.
Yeah.
And it's very curious the sort of reactions it promotes, especially the scene where it plays the LMFAO song, I'm Sexy and I Know It, while the Pope is getting dressed up in the most fanciest of garbs you could possibly
in the most
imagine.
traditional garbs, and then getting the papal tiara. It's like, what are you doing? It just...
I mean, I think your reaction is exactly the intended reaction.
But that's not a good reaction to go for.
I think
honestly, my reaction was just pure and utter confusion. I was just like, I mean, I know it's surrealism, and I do get what's going on with the scene, because I'm gonna get a little bit deep here.
Okay.
The song "I'm Sexy and I Know It" is meant to be a song when you kind of just like look at yourself and you're just like, yeah, I'm totally sexy and I know it, you know, that kind of thing. And
You have a lot of pride, I guess.
pride, yeah, it's a very prideful song. Yes, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. You have a lot of pride in yourself, and you think, yeah, yes, I am like this. Looking back, it actually fits with what he's doing. He is extremely prideful in the fact that he's the Pope. And that
I mentioned that he comes in like an Egyptian pharaoh.
Yeah, there's a scene that he comes in like in a yeah. They even have like the twangy kind of like Egyptian music like playing in the background.
Yeah.
Once again, it's Italian surrealism. What else do you expect?
One scene that sticks out to me where I think I really see the message you see in the show, which the church is just full of contradiction itself, is one of the end scenes in episode 6 where the Pope is having a very stern talk with all those members of an order, where he's just like, are you willing to go out on the streets and abandon your monasteries and abandon your clothes and live as the lowest of the low to fight against me? I thought not. You are willing to engage in some forms of earthly pleasure, therefore you are a hypocrite. And that's basically the message I got out of that speech.
Yeah.
It certainly is provocative on the case of human nature, and that, I mean, it's impossible to live without, seeking earthly pleasure.
Of course.
Not everybody in the modern world can live like St. Francis.
I know I wouldn't. Well, couldn't.
But at the same time, does that make his speech the right speech to make as a pope?
One of the things I have to keep reminding myself about this show, and about like film in general, is that sometimes, and especially with this show and how it's like so surrealistic, that characters sometimes are not specifically supposed to be characters. They are supposed to be ideals. This is still kind of like following along with the whole contradiction theme and everything. And the thing that I find, like, with a lot of the characters, and even, like, talking about, like, the sexuality that's been in the show and whatever so far, was, yes, we are all fallen human beings. Yes, we can be a huge contradiction within ourselves and everything. And honestly, in a lot of shows and that kind of stuff, it does show human nature. Pope Pius, I truly believe, is playing what signifies what the modern socialistic person would actually believe a Catholic to be. He's no longer just Pope Pius the 13th. He embodies what the world truly believes the Catholic Church to be.
Do you think that would be a very clear metaphor in the Prime Minister discussion as well, with the Prime Minister representing the world and Pope Pius representing the Church?
Yeah, honestly, I would.
Yeah, I think that's the impression I got as well. With like all the list of his demands he's giving, that could be how the world perceives the Catholic Church's moral standards.
Yep. It's showing a lot more and more as every episode chugs along.
But I think the whole point
Yeah.
of Catholicism is that merely pointing out that someone is a contradiction does not mean that their entire self is instantly discredited.
Oh, no, not at all.
Because with the church, it's always the case that the whole point that the church always teaches is that people do contradict themselves all the time.
Well, the
but
thing
it's the
is
church
that
that's there to help us when we do fall to come to a place that Christ has established for us that is perfect.
The thing about that is not to say that contradiction is okay,
Right.
but that God has offered salvation despite the contradiction. It's not like you
Yeah.
earn your way to heaven. It's
Right.
that you recognize that in this world you live in a life in the fallen state, which is the contradicting state.
Yes.
But you desire to get out of that.
Exactly, and that's the problem with this, is that they're portraying the church as still in that contradiction state where it's supposed to be there to help us, where Christ penetrates, transforms, and elevates us to be able to go past that contradiction.
If there is one thing that I'm even remotely interested in seeing, is like there have been so many times where I say I don't even want to finish the show just because I'm getting so annoyed with it at this point.
Yep.
It's like reading what's that book? For Whom the Bell Tolls. Here's my description of the young pope, as you know, in accordance with like the book For Whom the Bell Tolls. When you read a title like that, you're gonna kind of wonder, like, who does, the bell toll for? And you're gonna read that book because the title is so curious. You're just like, I really want to see For Whom the Bell Tolls. So you read it. Dang, this is depressing. Keeps up, I need to see who the bell tolls for. Keeps on moving forward, and then by that time you need to take freaking so many antidepressants because the book is so depressing, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh, well, there you go. I guess that's who the bell tolls for. And then basically the way I feel about this show is I gotta keep going because I need to see what the frick happens at the end. Wow, I'm getting passionate about. Dang, I'm getting more passionate about this than I thought you were.
Wow, okay. One thing I just kind of want to say to any commenters we have that think, oh, you're taking this too seriously and all that. Before you write that comment, just think about this for a minute. Instead of just making the accusations that, oh, we're too this or too that and too, much of a goody two-shoes or whatever, honestly think about the possibility that maybe there could be a situation where there is so much sin going on around you in your life that you possibly became numb to this. Just think about that before you write your comment.
And remember my comment earlier. I love Friday the 13th, and I'm agreeing with this guy.
That's what I'm saying. Think about it.
A ton of you guys suggested this series, so we are going to continue watching it.
Yep.
But, yeah, I mean, see you guys in episodes 7 and 8, I guess.
See ya. Should we just do that, Simon?